Good morning, everybody. I didn't realize people were here. I didn't have my gallery view setting on.
Good morning, Anissa.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Kenzie.
Might help if I hit my unmute.
Good morning, Kenzie. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, everyone.
I think you might be on more than one device causing the echo.
It seems that there might be somebody else in the office with Larry. Hi,
Okay.
Ryan. Hi, Terry. And hi, Harry in particular. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let me try to get him on mute. Bear with us as we're testing our computer.
Good morning, Harry Jean here. Can you guys hear me?
We got you, Harry. Hello. How are you?
Fine. I'm
It's
okay,
good
a
to
little
see you. I'm
nervous.
sorry I haven't had the opportunity to meet you, but thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to get
Morning, Harry.
my screen to come up.
We can see
Good
you.
morning. Oh, you can? Okay.
Yep.
You both see me. For some reason, I am not seeing anybody.
You got your gallery view, Counselor Edwards?
I got the same view I use all the time, and for some reason, I'm not seeing anybody.
Do you see just yourself?
Nobody.
Do you see just the city council hammer? The
All right.
gavel?
Nope, just came through. Now I see everybody.
Good.
Good.
Because I was stuck in that spot for a little bit too.
I hope they remember to unmute and connect the screen. That's one of my problems here.
Right. Who do we have for colleagues? Just gonna check on my colleagues real quick.
Larry's on.
Okay.
Thanks, here. Good morning, everyone.
I have Anissa, Ed, Frank, Kenzie, Liz, and Mike. Yeah, I think that's it for votes. All right, well, 10:05 and it's a working session, so I want to go ahead and get started if that's okay with the lead sponsor.
Fine with me, Madam Chair?
Very well. I'm going to read some opening remarks and then I'll turn it over to the lead sponsor to move this working session. For my colleagues, as I mentioned before, we're going to skip opening statements and get right to the heart of the matter. I'll go through the standard and make sure we're clear about what we're doing today, and then we're going to go right to work. Good morning, everyone. I am Lydia Edwards, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. It is Thursday, September 24th, and we're here today for a virtual working session, on docket 0942, petition for a special law, an act regarding the disability pension for Ryan Lenane, docket 0943, petition for a special law regarding an act regarding the disability pension for Harry Jean, and docket 0944, petition for a special law, an act regarding the disability pension for Terry Cotton. These matters were referred to the committee on August 19, 2020. In accordance with Governor Baker's March 12th executive order, we're able to have this working session online in order to assure the public safety, but also that we can continue to do our job. Excuse me, I keep calling it a working session. It's a hearing. My apologies. This enables the City Council to work out its responsibilities, keep people safe. The public may watch this meeting via live stream at www.boston.gov/city-council-tv. It will be rebroadcasted at a later date on Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964. For public testimony, written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov and will be made part of the record. These home rule petitions would increase the accidental disability retirement allowance payable to the officers named individually in each proposal. Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32, Section 7 governs the accidental disability retirement allowance and currently allows for a yearly amount of pension equal to 72% of the annual rate of regular compensation. This proposal would increase the retirement allowance to the rate of compensation that the officer would have received had such officer continued service as a police officer. In short, it would increase from 72% to 100% of the income that they would have received. The home rule petition also provides for the surviving spouse as follows: an annuity in the amount of 3/4 of the amount of pension payable to the officer per month at the time of his death, and if the surviving spouse remains unmarried, and if said surviving spouse remarries, the city shall pay in lieu of the aforesaid annuity an annuity of $550 per month. The statutory standard for accidental disability retirement is physically unable to perform the essential duties and responsibilities of the job, and that such inability is likely or deemed permanent before attaining the maximum age for the members group by reason of personal injury or violent act injury sustained by a hazard undergone as a result of and while in the performance of his or her duties. Again, that's in Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32, Section 7. I wanted to acknowledge my colleagues who are here before I turn it over to the lead sponsor. My colleagues, again, who are here, and they can correct me if anyone's joined since I began speaking. The sponsor of all three matters and all three dockets, Counselor at Large Anissa Sabi-George, District 2 City Councilor Ed Flynn, District 3 City Councilor Frank Baker, District 8 City Councilor Kenzie Bach, District 9 City Councilor Liz Braden, and at Large City Councilor Michael Flaherty. Of course, myself as the chair, I'm District 1 City Councilor. Have there been any other councilors to join us that I missed? Very well. I'll turn it over to the lead sponsor. If she's okay with anybody else speaking, or if you want, it's up to you, Anissa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. I'm happy to give a brief opening statement and get to the work. I appreciate your desire to get to this and for your flexibility, Madam Chair, and making sure that today's hearing was scheduled and that the participants could be with us. I want to first, on behalf of the City of Boston and on behalf of myself, I would like to thank Ryan and Harry and Terry for being here this morning, because I know that this morning and this day is a difficult one for you. I know that it has been difficult for you to prepare for this day, but I just want to share my thanks for your attendance. But more important than that, for me, I want to thank you on behalf of the City of Boston for your service to our city, your service protecting our communities, and your love of city and your love for our residents across the city. I've read your packets as they've been submitted. I've had conversations with you. I've had conversations about you with a number of individuals who care very deeply about you, care very much about your physical health, but I think more than that, care about your mental health. And so I think it's important for me to thank you for your service to our city. I understand that your injuries sustained, both physical and mental, have impacted you greatly, no doubt, so much so that you are unable to do the job that you all loved so much. So I just want to make sure that that note of thanks is made, because it is certainly the least and nearly not enough that we can do. And it's part of why we're here today. You went to work one day and you are unable to perform those duties anymore. So I think that it is important for us as a city to respect and honor your service to our city and move to make right the situation around your retirement. So that is it for me, Madam Chair, this morning. We'll have some more comments during testimony, and do want to just note how important it is that everyone is here, but also want to know how difficult I know this morning is for you. I also want to thank Larry and Donald for their support getting to this point as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. For those, unless my colleagues have any, I misstated, this is not a working session, so this is a hearing. So to my colleagues, out of respect and deference to my colleagues, if you have any brief statements and would like to say them, you may do so now. Otherwise, I will turn it over to, and we'll go in the order of the dockets to hear out from each one of the individuals. Any of my colleagues would like to make a brief statement? Just checking. Oh, I knew it. Councillor Flynn with the stapler removal. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. I'll be very brief. I just want to echo what Councilor Asabi George stated. I had the opportunity for 10 years as a probation officer to work with hundreds of Boston police officers, and I've seen the incredible work that they do in our neighborhoods, keeping our cities safe, keeping our residents safe, but also engaging the public and trying to do the best job that they can. And although it's a difficult time for these three officers, I also read the packages that were provided, and they have exceptional backgrounds, outstanding careers. They've been there for the people of Boston. And I also know that they have significant medical challenges ahead of them. And I think what you're proposing today, Councilor Asabi George, is the right path forward. So I just wanted to echo what you said about the service of these three fine Boston police officers. Thank you, Councilor Edwards.
Thank you very much. And so as stated, we're going to go in order of the dockets. And so if it makes sense, and I'll just check in with the lead sponsor, we'll just go with the docket number. The person and proponent can speak to that matter. Anybody in support can also speak to that matter, or in opposition to that matter. And then the colleagues can ask questions. And then we'll move on to the next one. Does that make sense, or does that work with you?
I would actually suggest, Madam Chair, respectfully, that Ryan, Harry, and Terry have an opportunity to make their comment, and then we can ask questions of all three at the same time, because there may be similar questions for each one of them. It's certainly up to your discretion, and I'm certain that BPPA President Larry Calderon, as well as the Detectives Union President Donald Casey, may also have comments. It's certainly up to your discretion. For the sake of time, may be best to have the three members, retired police officers, make their statements first.
I can understand.
But I don't have a preference.
Okay.
Just in case of time, maybe easier to have all three give statements.
No, understood. So how about this? I will out of deference to the service that they have done, allow for them to present themselves and their statements first. I do think, though, when it comes to each one of them afterwards, we will have, you may have to make more than one statement, Larry, and the detectives, but you will make one for each one. Okay, very well. Again, so in order of the docket that we have, I believe Officer Ryan Lenane would be first at docket number 0942. And then I believe we have, 0943, who is, let me just make sure, I think it's Caution. And then we have 0944, who would be Harry Jean would be next, and then 0944, Terry Todd. Okay, so very well. Officer Lenane.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, Council, and thank you for holding this hearing and listening to me today. Also, thank you, Councilor Asabi George, for submitting this petition on my behalf. My name is Ryan Lenane, and as you know, I am a retired police officer. I became a police officer in 2006, and it was an extremely proud moment for my family and I. The Boston Police Academy was tough, but I truly loved every second of it. In the summer of 2006, when I graduated, I was placed at District 11 in Dorchester. From the first day, I was learning the job and understanding the struggles of the city. I had a lot of respect and pride for my new career early on, but the love grew every time I put my uniform on. Within a year of being on the job, I was playing basketball with the kids of the neighborhood at Towns Field or inside the gym at St. Peter's Parish. I loved the community and enjoyed meeting these kids, not only as a police officer, but as an approachable, fun-loving, and caring guy. These kids reminded me of my upbringing in Hyde Park on Georgetown Drive in the Georgetown Housing Development, and how we had police officers who patrolled our neighborhoods, who we looked up to and dreamed to be like one day. But that all changed. When I was shot in broad daylight on December 7th, 2013 on Geneva Ave. There has not been a single day that this incident does not replay in my head. I have nightmares that keep me up constantly in fear of being shot again on a daily basis. I wish I could go back to that day and just stay home with my pregnant wife and daughter. Excuse me.
Take your time. There's no rush at all.
I wish I could go back to that day and just stay home with my pregnant wife and daughter so I could still be doing the job I love. I miss the community. I miss the kids making fun of my jump shot and calling me chin strap. And most of all, I miss the job. I grew up in this city. I love this city, and I gave it my all. As you know, I did go through the process to receive a disability retirement, and I am receiving that now. Financially, it has been difficult for my family as the pension is much less than the earnings as a police officer, as my earnings as a police officer. The additional benefit this petition would provide my family would be an enormous help in the ability to make ends meet. I am thankful to you for considering this petition, and it would mean a measure of financial stability for my family as I continue to work on my recovery. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. I think it's next is Officer Harry Jean. Harry? Harry, can you hear us?
Harry, please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. It's a lot to hear him. Hear what he's saying. That's all. I can't listen to all that.
I understand, Harry. Do you feel ready to make your statement? Okay. If it's okay with the lead sponsor, we might go to Terry Cotton for now, and we'll come back to Harry. Harry?
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Okay. Very well. Harry?
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Terry Cotton. Thank you for holding this hearing today, and a special thank you to Councilor Asabi George for sponsoring this petition. This petition would be a tremendous benefit to me and my family. As you know, I'm a retired Boston police officer. I receive a disability pension related to being shot and permanently disabled in 2013. I'm thankful for the disability pension, but it has been difficult for my family to make ends meet, particularly since the COVID pandemic started. To be honest, if this petition was passed, it would help my family get back on our feet financially. Before my shooting, I woke up every day looking forward to going to work and serving the people of Boston. I love being a Boston police officer. I love working with the people in the community and helping make our great city safe. But that was taken away from me on August 7th, 2013. My partner and I were shot. On that day, we were driving down the street when a young man on the side of the road with his shirt and showed us he had a handgun. When we stopped, backed up, exited our vehicle, and he began shooting at us indiscriminately. We turned fire, but we both were shot. My life has changed dramatically since that day. Not a day goes by when I don't think about that day, and when I don't have to deal with that trauma. The events of that day have changed my family, who had to deal with my disability and the way that it has changed me. And it's been a struggle financially. As I said, this petition would help my family tremendously financially. It would let me work on my healing rather than worry all about my finances. I wish I didn't have to be here today to ask you to support this petition, but I am deeply grateful for you to have considering it. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. And Harry, do you feel able and ready? You would need to unmute yourself.
All right, so I got my statement. I'm not sure what you guys wanted to hear, but I wanted to thank, I don't know if I got the name correct, Counselor Asabi George, for her opening statement, because it really touched deep to acknowledging us. Good morning to those of you who do not know me. My name is Harry Jean. I'm a retired Boston police detective. Just to let you know a little about myself, I grew up in the area of Roxbury, Dorchester, and Hyde Park. My parents were Haitian immigrants. They worked very hard to raise 5 of us to have respect and good Christian values for man and God. My dreams to become a police officer was inspired by my mother's story on how I came to be. She told me that when she arrived at Boston City Hospital, back then, it's called now Boston Medical, in the parking lot, in a Boston police cruiser, she was in the process of giving birth to me. She told me that the officer yelled at her, telling her she couldn't have the baby in the back of his cruiser, and then tried to push me back, which caused me to be a very sick newborn baby at the time, but I survived. That was in 1967. I grew up wanting to be a better version of that officer, to protect, to serve, to make a difference. And that day came true when I became part of the Boston Police Recruit Class 2489. On August 7th, 2013, the day for which I'm here now, as a member of the Boston Police Drug Control Unit, myself and my partner were approached by 2 black males, both displaying firearms from their waist. Upon exiting our vehicle, I was immediately engaged in what felt like an endless gun battle. One suspect ended up deceased. The other made good his escape at the time. I suffered multiple gunshot wounds to my left leg, which now has 3 holes and 1 bullet inside, and then discovered my partner had been shot. I was taken to Boston Medical where I was admitted. My injuries had led me to a series of medical visits until this day. My life as an officer in the department has never been the same since that day. I am here today, but only as an empty shell of whom I used to be. I honestly didn't think I'd be alive to be here today at all. Every day in my life is a constant battle to be normal for my family and for myself. I have given all to the city. My family has given all to the city. I nearly lost my life and my family. I suffer from my injuries every day. I enjoyed my job as a member of the Boston Police Department. I've only been injured once, at most twice on the job. I've worked and met some fine officers to whom I can call brother to this day. I have a great partner who I also call my brother. I never would have imagined that my career and life would have come to such an abrupt change and end due to my injuries. I used to live in the city of Boston, but months after my incident, it became impossible to keep up with the financial demands of the city as a husband, a father of 6, and having a mother-in-law with dementia. I'm not a public speaker. I don't know what more I can add. I have given all you guys everything but a live voice, but now you haven't. I don't even want to be here, but I know I have to be. I thank you for listening, and if you please, I ask that only you find it in your hearts to do right by me, my family, and those others who are suffering from trauma as I have for this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate each one of you telling your stories, going back to that painful moment, and also telling us about who you are as husbands, as providers for your family. So I want to thank you for that. I do truly appreciate that. And I can see on your faces how difficult it was to go back to that moment. With that, if you don't mind, we have Larry Calderon from the Boston Patrolmen's Association. We have also, and Donald Casey from the Detectives Association, from the Detectives, representing Detectives Union. Do I have any other speakers besides counselors today? Counselor Asabi George?
No, Madam Chair.
Very well. So if we could go by each docket then, and you could speak to each one of the docket numbers, or the two that would be under your purview, and then we'll have Detective Donald Casey speak to Harry Jean. Does that work?
That works fine, Counselor. Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead, Larry.
All right. First off, good morning to my fellow brothers in uniform here, Terry, Harry Jean, and Brian. Tremendous job, gentlemen. Chairwoman Edwards, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm going to speak on behalf of all 3 officers at once and just make a statement, okay? Counselor Asabi George, tremendous work. Thank you very much for all of your hard efforts and putting forth to make this happen. And I say thank you to all of the counselors who are on board. Many of you have worked with me through the years in my previous roles representing the BPPA. And you've always been outstanding in your job. The newer counselors, I thank you as well. I know that we're going to work together just as successfully as I have in the past with the other counselors. As soon as we get through this crisis of COVID, I think it'll be better with one-on-one conversations as opposed to this computer. It's my first time using Zoom, at least on video anyway. So anyway, good morning. My name is Larry Calderoni. I'm the president of the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association, which proudly represents approximately 1,600 men and women that put their lives on the line every day as Boston police officers. On the behalf of the BPPA, I'm honored to speak on the home rule petitions filed regarding my fellow patrol officers and Detective Terry Cotton, Ryan Lenane, and to Harry Jean. I worked side by side with these officers throughout my career. I know them very well. They're outstanding, dedicated officers, and they're great family men. Unfortunately, each of these officers was shot while protecting the people of Boston, which has resulted in career-ending injuries. The home rule petitions would grant the officers pensions, would grant the officers pensions equal to what they would have made had they not been viciously shot and disabled in the line of duty. We ask that you honor that sacrifice that these officers have made by passing all three of the petitions, which will assist in providing some sense of financial security for them and their families. Every day, the men and women of the Boston Police Department leave roll call knowing that today might be that day. It might be that day that they encounter a violent criminal, a violent suspect, an armed offender, the day that they might get injured or possibly lose their life. Thankfully, most officers, that day never comes a reality. They get to go home, they get to see their loved ones, and they're unharmed by the horrors and reality of everyday police work. Unfortunately, these three officers, they did experience the worst. They rose to the occasion by quite literally putting their lives on the line to protect and serve the citizens of Boston. For the families of these three officers, they didn't see their loved ones that day until after their hospital stay. Instead, their families got to receive that horrible contact call to rush and get their belongings and get to the hospital. For these officers and their families, that day is the day that will never be able to escape their memory, and they'll never be able to forget, because that day changed their lives forever. As you know, Mass General Laws, Chapter 32, Section 7, does provide a benefit for officers who are disabled in the line of duty. That law generally pays the officers 72% of their last wage. It's an important and good law. But when an officer is disabled as a result of a violent shooting, when the officer quite literally puts their life on the line and in front of a bullet to protect others, we can and we should do more. An officer who does this deserves not to suffer any loss of income as a result of his or her sacrifice. And I implore you, I beg you, that the description of these officers that I've given you, the ones in front of you today, they deserve your help. They're asking for your help. And so am I as the leader of the BPPA. As I noted previously, city councils in the past have also extended this courtesy with similar petitions to other Boston police officers that were disabled in other shootings. Many municipalities passed similar home rule petitions for their officers in such circumstances as well. Again, I ask the city council to afford these three officers that same treatment and that same consideration. The BPPA again wants to applaud Councilor Asabi George for the fashioning of her petitions. As you know, the Boston Retirement Board packaged these and you've received them. All three officers have already gone through the process of having three expert doctors appointed by the Commonwealth certify their disabilities. They're receiving disability distributions currently pursuant to the provision above that I mentioned. While cost should not be an impediment to honoring these officers, I would note that the petitions are written so that the city will be responsible for only the difference of their basic wages. Currently, the 72% that they receive, they're asking for the 28% difference. That is the responsibility that the city would take on, the remaining 28%. The bill is written to minimize the financial impact that the city would incur, and at the same time, fully compensate the officers. Excuse me. In closing, I'd like to note that I'm speaking to you remotely because of COVID-19, as we know, the invisible killer that's changed and upended lives and ruined families. During this crisis, we've experienced many other issues in the city of Boston. The officers of the BPPA have not been able to shelter at home, like many families. We've had very limited days off. We're continually being ordered to work to protect the citizenry of Boston, and we do it with pride and dedication. We head into the streets of Boston to serve and protect no matter what is waiting for us, no matter what the cost might be to our health and our own security. We want to thank all the officers for what they do every day of the week, and especially for the 3 officers in front of you that experience the worst. We keep the city safe day in and day out. And again, I ask the council to take this into consideration. Thank these officers for their sacrifice. And please do the best you can to pass these petitions and make their families in a better state financially. Thank you, councilors.
Thank you. Detective Donald Casey.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to be very brief. I know a lot was said today, so I'm going to be very brief in my statements. First and foremost, for those that don't know me, my name is Donald Casey, President, Boston Police Detectives Union. I've been a member of the police department for 32 years. I worked in several different units, drug unit, gang unit, school police. I was raised in Mattapan, very close to where Harry Jean was raised. I think he's a little bit younger than me, but I know all the pitfalls he had to overcome to become a Boston police officer. There's a lot of things going in our neighborhood that he had to overcome to succeed. Becoming a police officer isn't as easy as most might think, especially with those pitfalls. I think Harry Jean is an exceptional person, and he was an exceptional police officer, particularly when he was in the drug unit at the same time I was. He worked in District 3 and I worked in District 11, which was mirroring districts or right next to each other. So I know the work that Harry Jean did as a police officer and was always a professional and always a gentleman. I would be remiss to say that what's going on nationally does not put a black eye on the Boston Police Department as well as other police departments. I don't think it's deserved it, but I would be remiss not to mention it. Harry Jean is one of those good police officers, as well as the other officers involved, Terry and Ryan. I would think that these are the 3 examples that you don't hear about. Those individuals that are from this city, they grew up in this city, they were educated in the city, and they went out and did a job for the city, and they paid a great sacrifice. I appreciate City Councilor Sabi George, as well as Councilor Edwards, for the conversations we've had about these officers. I think that anything you could do to ease the burden that they've had financially and otherwise would be great. It would be fantastic for the city, not just these officers, for these cities, because they're true heroes. They're true heroes to the city. And I know in light of everything that's going on, that's not a public it's not a thing that you hear often in recent months, but they are true heroes. They're true Boston police officers, and they're true heroes. And anything anyone could do for them would be greatly appreciated by the Boston Police Department, as well as the Detective Union and the Patrolman's Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for my colleagues, we can go through and just ask any general questions. I think out of respect for the traumatic and the trauma that the officers went through, I personally will be asking my questions, which are more informative based, to either my colleagues who've been here and been through this process before, such as Councilor Flaherty, or to Larry or Donald. That's how I intend to. I would recommend to those my colleagues, having seen what the officers have gone through, and I want to be clear to the officers, our questions are not questioning your service or your injury. We're not questioning that, or your pain, I should say. Okay. This is a process, it's public, it's open, and we are both stewards of the fiscal, responsibility of the city, but also and making sure that city workers are able to live in dignity as well. So we're balancing both. We're going to ask these questions, and I don't want anyone to see them as anything but us doing our job. Okay. Again, I just have, and I made this commitment to Councilor Sabi George. I made this commitment based on my experience having worked with people who've gone through trauma. I'm recommending to my colleagues, though not telling them what to do, that their questions would be best served by to Larry and to Donald, and possibly Councilor Flaherty, who I believe has done this the most out of all of us. That's my recommendation, though it's obviously not a requirement. So with that, I will go to the lead sponsor, and I will go in order of arrival for any questions. Counselor Asabi George.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for that instruction and recommendation. I think that it's something that we should all take under great advisement. And again, I do appreciate that. I appreciate the three of you sharing your experiences and your story, and a small reflection and perhaps a small window into the day of your injury. And and I want to say that I appreciate how sort of traumatic and or re-traumatizing that the events of that day are to share with us. I've read through your packets. I've read a great deal into your narratives, into sort of the experiences that you've shared with both medical professionals and others around that day, and the injury that has persisted since then. Not to share anyone's sort of share it sort of publicly, read from your files, but I do want to just share some without identifying from whose packet they come from, to sort of emphasize and reiterate some of the ongoing trauma that you all experience and feel every single day. But just for here, I was a kid on the streets of Boston too, and feel that the person that had injured you was found and charged with unrelated crimes, but now walks free. And this experience of walking free and hearing the three of you discuss your experiences, for me, reminds me how not free the three of you are from this trauma and from that experience. And I think that it's really important to know that the pressure of that recollection and the ongoing pressure that those events have created for you have to be noted for the public to hear, to understand that the insomnia, that the nightmares, that the interrupted sleep, that the early morning awakening, the inability to concentrate, to spend time in isolation, away from your friends, away from your family. What's also struck me in some of these reports is the inability to be connected to people that you were once connected to your family and to your friends and to your coworkers, and the avoidance of police stations and police shows and your colleagues from the police department, to feel and to read about your feelings of being overwhelmed, and having and also feeling this need to prove the trauma that you've experienced. And I think that it was Harry that mentioned that he didn't want to be here. And I believe that none of us want to be here, that we didn't want any of you to have this experience, and that we didn't want you to have to be here to share those experiences with us today, because it is such an emotional and painful recollection, no doubt, because I've read your files, and it's also painful for your families to experience this again with you today, as it's been ongoing since the dates of your injuries from 2013. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank President Calderoni and President Casey for being with us today too, to represent you. Donald and Larry have represented you well through this process, and you're very grateful for all of your experiences here. I do urge my colleagues to read through these packets if they haven't had an opportunity to. There is certainly a great deal of medical information, but for me, it's more the narrative of both what happened that day and how each of you found your way to become police officers, to serve the city of Boston, to serve the city that you all love so much, and then to read about the pain that you're burdened with, and not wanting to sometimes come back to the city, to not want to experience sort of that. I think someone referred to it as sort of a hectic experience coming back into the city, because it is triggering for you. So I'm, again, just very grateful that you're able to be here with us today to share your experiences. It's so important for us as we discuss this matter, as we look to make decisions on this matter, that we've heard from the three of you. So I don't have any specific questions to this. I'm certain that my colleagues have, as they haven't been in the weeds on your circumstances specifically. So that is it for me. for now, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I meant to mention the order. It would be Counselor Asabi George, Counselor Braden, Counselor Bach, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Baker, Counselor Flaherty, and then I would ask any questions if they weren't asked by my colleague. So Counselor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've never sat on this seat before, so I hope to learn a lot about the process, especially from more seasoned and experienced city councillors such as Councillor Flaherty. I also want to express my gratitude to the officers for their testimony this morning and for their service. I come from Northern Ireland. I'm not unfamiliar with the impacts of post-traumatic stress disorder on officers and police and civilians. Trauma that can have long-lasting impacts on your life and your ability to function. And so I look forward to just sitting and listening and learning more. And thanks again for your testimony this morning. I know it was difficult. Thank you.
Counselor Bach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank the officers for being here today and for your service and sharing what are hard stories to share. And I know that our society still has a strong bias against recognizing the realities of trauma and mental health. And I think, all of us on the council are committed to a world in which we treat those as just as much of a real medical situation as a physical injury. And so grateful to you for being here today. And I think, I just find myself thinking in this moment just about what an illustration this is of how, of just like, what a terrible sort of gun violence culture we've managed to spiral into as a country. Obviously, both of these incidents that we're talking about, I think two of you were talking about the same incident, were traumatic as they were, and in both cases resulted in somebody, not an officer, dying because of just the huge availability of guns in our streets, and it's just such a, I don't know, I lived somewhere else across the ocean for 4 years where this wasn't a reality, and I just think it's important in this moment to zoom out and say that that gun violence and the availability of guns across our civilian and I would say our law enforcement world here in the U.S. is just such a cancer on our shared life, and it spirals in all these terrible ways in trauma for our officers and for our communities. I, like Councillor Braden, am new to this. I have questions that I think maybe are perhaps best directed to Councillor Flaherty, but maybe also President Calderone and Donald. I'm so sorry, I've blanked on your last name for a second. But one is just if somebody could give a context of how often we've done this in Boston. And I know that President Calderone said it's been done in other municipalities, and we've done it here before. It would be helpful to me to understand kind of the scale of how frequently these petitions have been passed by past councils. And maybe I'll start there.
Chairwoman, am I able to answer that? Did you want me to answer that?
Yes, and actually, Kenzie, could you go ahead and just have your questions out? So the question
Sure.
is about.
Well, why don't I just stop with that? I think. Oh, sorry, two questions. That one.
Yeah.
And then also if the other one would just be, it seemed from the packets like none of the three individuals are currently working in other jobs, but if somebody could just confirm that again, that would be helpful. Those are my two. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. To Larry or Detective or to Donald.
Yeah, I can answer a few of them. So since 1995, I'm aware of 5 police officers in the city of Boston that have been graciously awarded the 28% that we're asking for these officers. I do have the 5 names, but instead of doing it on a public forum, if I could share them with you privately and maybe extend it to the entire council if they wish to know. But we have 5 officers since 1995 that have passed home rule petitions through the Boston City Council. and then passed by the legislature up at the State House. I do have those names, Counselor.
I believe the next question is on the working status. Was that correct, Councilor Bach?
Yeah, and it would be helpful if Larry or someone had a sense of other municipalities outside of Boston on that first front as well.
I can do that as well, Counselor. I'll reach out to some of my counterparts within the policy group and find out other offices that maybe I'm unaware of, but I'll get a complete list over the next few days, and by next week, we'll have what I have.
Thanks.
I think the last question was, are any of the officers working?
Can jump in, unless you want to go, Larry, I can jump in and Harry after.
I'm unaware, Donnie, unless, I'm sorry, I'm unaware, as far as I know, none of the officers are currently employed. Is that correct, Don?
For Harry Jean, he has not worked. The last job he held was for the Boston Police Department. And I think the question was he physically able to work? As he stated, he has was shot 3 times in the leg. 1 bullet is still in the leg, and he's being treated as time goes on. He's still being treated for his injuries.
Okay. Councilor Bach, is that good, or do you have any other ones?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we've also been joined by Councilor Ricardo Arroyo. I just checked in with him, and he's listening right now, and he'll come to the end, and I'll check in with him again if he wants to make a statement or ask any questions. Councilor Flynn, or excuse me, yeah, Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. I don't have any specific questions, but I just wanted to make 2 points after listening to the 3 officers' stories. You know, one point I wanted to reference is, you know, these officers gave everything they had to protect the residents of Boston and trying to develop relationships with the residents. And because they were shot, you know, their families pay the financial, you know, are disadvantaged because of losing that type of income. Their family really pays a large price also financially. So I think what is fair is this proposal outlined by Councilor Asabi George. But I also wanted to highlight one other point is, you know, being active with the disabled American veterans. I've read hundreds of reports, but what was described in the opening statements is very similar, in my opinion, to a lot of veterans returning home after combat. Some of the mental health, especially the mental health challenges that they have. And, you know, at times our federal government will say, you know, thank you for your service, so or welcome home. Well, that's not good enough for me, is welcome home or thank you for your service. It's what type of programs and what type of services that these police officers or these veterans, we're not giving them anything. They've earned that, in my opinion, for putting their life on the line, putting their family on the line as well. So, I mean, I know exactly how I'm voting. I don't have any questions, but I just want to say thank you to Councilor Asabi George and Councilor Edwards. I also want to say thank you to Larry and Donald, but especially the 3 police officers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank, you know, Ryan and Harry and Terry for your service, your commitment to the city, and Larry and Donald also. In this time, I think this is important here for us to make sure we take care of you guys. I plan on voting in the affirmative in all 3 of these dockets here. But I just think it's important for us to take care of the people that are taking care of us. Larry, I do have one question. The 28%, is that going to be retro or is that just moving forward?
Counselor, thank you again for being so forthright and upfront that you would be supportive of all three of these petitions. We are asking that that would be retroactive to the date that they left, yes.
Okay. Thank you. And I have no further questions. Thank you, Madam Chair, for having this here. And also thank you, Councilor George, for these docket numbers.
Thank you. Counselor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've also reviewed the packets, and I've had the great fortune back when I was an assistant district attorney in Roxbury District Court to have some cases with both Regine and also Terry Cotton. So I'm going to attest to their work ethic and the great job they did as police officers, along with Officer Lenane. So I appreciate your service to our city, and sorry that this happened to you while in the performance of your duties, and understanding based on these packets that are very thorough and complete. And you've gone through the retirement process, and it's meritorious and worthy of support from the council. So best of luck to all of you in your continued recovery from the events that led up to this conversation that we're having, and feel free to reach out to our respective offices if there's anything we can do for you and your families moving forward. So I appreciate your dedication and your commitment to our city, and the great work that you've done as members of the police department. And I didn't have the benefit of working with Ryan, but I can attest to having cases in Roxbury District Court with both Terry and Harry. And not only they great people and great individuals, but they were very good cops, and appreciate the work that they've done. So thank you, Madam Chair. And if for any questions, since 2000, since being on the council, I think the council in that time has probably done 3 police officers. We've also done some firefighters, but so it's as referenced, Larry, I think laid it out perfectly in terms of how retirement benefit works. And then there's an additional 28% that benefit is available for situations like this where folks are involved and have permanent lasting injuries that make it unable for them to perform their duties moving forward. And I think that's the exception that has been made here. And if any of my colleagues have any additional questions that I can shed some light on, but we don't do them every day. And again, it's my time here in 20 years here, I think I've participated in 3 for the Boston Police, and maybe 2 or 3 or so for the fire department.
Thank you very much. Councilor Arroyo, I didn't know if you want a brief statement, some questions, any thoughts? Anything?
Yeah, just briefly, no questions. I just want to thank the officers for their service. And I'm truly sorry for the harm that's been caused to you in the performance of your duties, and the ongoing trauma that you are seeing and dealing with. And so my thoughts are with you. I'm sorry this was such a difficult process. And I know Councilor Asabi George certainly spoke for me when reliving trauma and having to go through that process is certainly not something anybody here would want anyone to have to go through. And I'm sorry that to some extent that's something that happened today. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for your story and your testimony. And I'll be watching back the tape for what I did miss. I did catch some of it, but I'm deeply appreciative for the service that you've rendered this city. Thank you.
Okay, so I just had a couple follow-up questions for whomever. First for Councilor Flaherty, just to make sure I understand, and then if Larry or Donald want to add to them, that's fine. With regards to the last 3 BPD officers, of police officers, or the 5 in total, I think since 1995, how many of them, what were the typical injuries that they suffered from? Were they alive? What was the injury?
Sure. I know in one instance it was a significant brain injury. It was an officer that was involved in a motor vehicle accident. I believe he may have been on a motorcycle, if not a cruiser, and kind of got T-boned at an intersection responding to a call, and multiple surgeries, multiple fractures throughout skull and face. So I know that was a difficult one. And I believe that there was a significant injury through it was a firefight, and then there was a struggle, physical confrontation. And the officers or detectives can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but then the weapon was put against the face of the cop during the struggle, and the gun jammed. But in the officer's struggle to try to prevent that gun from being turned on him, I believe that he basically tore all the ligaments, I believe, off of one or both of his shoulders. And after multiple shoulder surgeries, wasn't going to be able to compete and perform because he couldn't lift. He didn't have the ability to lift his hands up anymore, so he wouldn't be able to perform his duty. So I know those are two, and I'm trying to think of the third one. I think the third one was also a brain injury and with some significant post-traumatic stress involved in a firefight. And I want to say it might have been in the downtown, the financial district. Someone had a weapon that had a laser, and it was the laser was focused on the officer for a significant period of time, and there was a shootout. So I think that's sort of sum and substance of the three that I can recall. And they suffered physical injuries, but in addition to that, they had suffered significant post-traumatic stress and some mental health issues as well.
Larry,
And if Larry or Don can sort of recapture if I'm accurate on those. It might have been another one. I'm just drawing a blank.
Yes, Counselor, your memory serves you well. Those are accurate statements. I can tell you, out of the five counselors, out of the five names that I know of that are in front of me, dating back to 1995, they were all violent incidents. There is only one that I'm aware of. There was not a gun battle, but I will gladly discuss the mental state of the officer and the injuries that he is still suffering from today. If we could do that offline, personally, that would be appreciated. But the other individuals, as you will see, that I can share with you, as I said, next week, are horrific gun battles. And as far as I know, the officers are still with us. Yes.
okay. And I want to be clear about what we can commit to in terms of being on and off the record, as I discussed with Councilor Sabi George, because this is a public forum about an extra 28%. What you provide to us for our consideration, Larry, becomes part of that record. Okay. And so, and I correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Sabi George, this is part of the hearing. So records submitted in support of something in a hearing, they're part of the record. Christine, you could correct me if I'm wrong. And so there's certain levels of privacy. We cannot promise you anything that we get on behalf of any of the officers is part of a foiable, and I made that word up, but I think you know what I mean, a public records request. Okay?
And I would say, Madam Chair, if I could just interrupt, the five that I think Mr. Calderoni is referencing are all part of the public record as it is.
Okay.
And they're because they've already been passed and submitted and through that process.
Okay, but I just wanted to make clear, I understand, Larry, you're wanting to protect your members, their history, their personal lives. I think that's, noble, but I did not want you to think that we could commit to that.
No, Counsel, I understand fully. And Councilor Sabi George is correct. They're all public records. They've already been passed through the legislature and are available, yes.
Okay, so my next question is, again, for whomever, how much can they work while they're in retirement? Are they limited in what they can make?
Sorry, Counselor, bear with me 1 second to make sure I'm correct on that. So, Counselor and everyone else as well, the way these petitions are written, there would be no earnings cap if the officers were able to work in the future. Currently, none are employed, and currently there is a cap. But the way these petitions, if they're voted through, and the officers were able to sustain employment later on down the road, there would be no earnings cap.
So there's for these petitions or for petitions, you can implement an earnings cap. Is that normal?
It just depends on the way they're written and put forward. Some Some departments and some municipalities have done it just like we're attempting to do it. Other municipalities have chosen not to. And I can't guess on which ones they are or the reasons that they would be doing so. But in Boston, this is a way that it's been done in the past.
So for all 5 that we know of, and we can look at those records, they've also been without an earnings cap.
We'd have to look at them, Counselor, just to make sure. I wouldn't want to commit to a yes, but we could look at them.
Thank you. I'm happy to do that as well. Now, I think one of the questions we got, and we did get testimony that was withheld from the, God, I'm going to mess up their names. The organization, the municipal, what is it, Kenzie?
Research Bureau?
Mass
Mom,
Municipal Association?
Municipal Research Bureau.
Thank you. And so that was submitted, and then I think it may have been my miscalculation to not re-invite her, but she had a comment during our last kind of discussion about this. And one of the things that she had mentioned was the expected totals in terms of financial contributions for a typical officer, not even these ones, but just a typical officer. Because I understand this is for the rest of their lives, plus 75% for their spouses if they don't remarry. Do you have an estimate about what that number is for an officer? I know I have some ages. I don't have everyone's exact ages. I think 36 or in their mid to late 30s and 50s for the officers today. But do you have an estimate about what that would be for one or all of them?
I do not have an estimate, no, Counsel.
Okay. Then I had a question. You had said that the standard is what the officer would have made, but for their injury, right? Like as the retirement?
That is correct. Yes, it's their base wages, correct.
Their base wages.
Yes.
So that doesn't include overtime. That includes their salaried wages at the time. And that's what the 72% is based off of too, or no?
The 72% is based off of their last wage when they left the job and only the base salary, no overtime, no extracurriculars, just the base wages.
So for my education and for those who are watching, if I made, because I'm bad at math, so I'm choosing numbers that have a lot of zeros in there. $100,000 is my base salary, okay? 72% of that is what my retirement pay would be.
That is correct.
And that would be split up in 12 months.
That is correct.
Okay. If I made $100,000, but $150,000 and $50,000 of that is overtime, that is not included in the calculation for the 72%, or is it because it was my last paycheck?
It is not. It is only the base wages, no overtime, no extracurricular work, only the base wage. So if I'm a police officer and my base salary is $70,000, then I'm going to get approximately $50,000 would be the payout. 72% of the 70,000.
Are there other benefits that come with retirement, health care, health insurance, those kinds of things that come? Is that part of the retirement package?
It's the same. Sorry, Counsel. I was just making sure I give you correct information. It's the same health benefits that all city employees receive in retirement. Yes.
Okay, so there right now, again, I know that's not under the special law, chapter 37, so on and so forth. I just wanted to know who's paying for and how are they able to access help.
Yes.
They're not. It's okay. So my other question. And it doesn't include COLA, like cost of living increases, or does it?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's a minimal cost of living increase that we believe is issued by the state. I think it's a minimal cost of living increase. It is not, to my knowledge, what would be received in a collective bargaining agreement, if that's what you're asking. If we were to receive a CBA benefit down the road, does it apply here? No, it does not. It's issued elsewhere.
Is the COLA based off the 72 or is it based off the 28 or the full amount?
I don't know that. Stand by one sec. Let me just ask that.
And by the way, for my colleagues, I'm asking all these questions. I understand he may not have the answers. We can have a quick working session where he gets those answers to us as well. So don't be shy with questions. We can get the answers. And I don't see his, if he doesn't have the answer right now, that's not a bad thing. This is both to the officers and my colleagues. These are general questions that I have.
I would
Yeah.
also suggest, Madam Chair, that some of those questions we could direct to the City of Boston Retirement Board, as they were invited, but generally don't participate in this type of hearing. They would be and could be directed to answer those questions specifically for the record.
I think COLA is based off of your beginning earnings. Like they only base a COLA off, I think it's like $18,000 or something, the part of your initial, even if you make $100,000, your whole COLA payment isn't based off that $100,000 in retirement. It's based off a capped amount towards the beginning. It's like $20,000 or something like that, I think.
Okay.
You're correct, Councilor Baker. Sorry, Councilor, go ahead.
Very well. And Counselor, let's see, I'm sorry. My last question. 28. And this is not to at all discount the toll of PTSD, but I wanted to make sure I'm clear that the crux of why the officers, is because of the mental anguish and burden that PTSD is bringing on them as their number one reason as to why they cannot fulfill the obligations of the job.
Well, Counselor,
I'm not downplaying it, please. I just want to make sure. Okay.
I understand. To give you an appropriate response, unfortunately, I'm not one of the officers, I should say fortunately, I'm not one of the officers that have experienced this tragedy or this physical disability that they're experiencing. And I would have to say that each individual officer experiences trauma and PTSD differently. And the physical injuries hinder the ability to do this job as well. Each officer has physical injuries, is suffering some type of PTSD as well. So it would be unfair if I tried to describe it as a whole for everyone. I would have to say that each and every counselor has a medical packet in front of them. If they look at the medical packet for individual officers or all three, that would probably be the better way to do it instead of me trying to answer it for all three officers. Because honestly, I don't know how they feel or how they're suffering. And I have to say that I don't want to.
If I could just talk.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if I could just talk for Harry. I'm sure Larry would jump in with his guys. It's definitely, I mean, that's a byproduct of it. It sounds quick to say that, but the mental part of it is a byproduct of what happened that night. But the physical is definitely there with regards to Harry. I hope that helped.
It does help, and it does state in the packets the reason for their retirement. For some, it's PTSD, and so just to let folks know, there. In terms of, I think that's it for me. If I come up with any ones, we'll go through another round. I know that most of my colleagues don't have questions. Councillor Bach did, however, raise her hand. Councillor Bach.
It was just a quick follow-up on your question, Councillor Edwards. President Calderoni, I know that that the hazard pay bump gets included for the purposes of calculating pensions and other things in our police CBAs. So when you say the base wage pay, is that including the hazard pay that they would have gotten at the time, or only like true base pay?
It would include the hazard-based pay as well. Yes, it would.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And Councillor Edwards, I just wanted to say, I think in all three packets that we have, PTSD is listed as the medical reason for which the application's filed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, I didn't know if any other councillors had a second round. I think it would be as as Larry and Donald probably will come back individually to talk with any counselors and answer some of the questions that we asked. And also get back to us so we can have kind of a working session and move these along. You don't necessarily have to answer them in that, but I do want to make sure that that these questions are answered.
Absolutely.
So I can go back again, Counselor Sabi George, if you wanted to start, or I can check with anybody. Nope. All right, you do. You're good. You're good. Counselor Braden, are you good? Good to go. Counselor Bach.
Can I ask one quick question on the
Yeah.
record, Counselor Edwards?
Yeah.
I wondered, this is not really for anybody here. It's maybe just something we could send to BPD. I think it would be helpful to know whether the department instituted any policy changes or kind of had any lessons learned from these two incidents. In terms of, for instance, I think one incident that involved two of the officers is an undercover unit engaging with somebody who has a gun. I'm just sort of, because of how traumatic these things are for our officers and for civilians and residents of Boston, everybody around the incident. I would love to know if any policy shifts came out of either of these for us, just to diminish the number of these situations that we and that our police department has to deal with in the future.
Thank you. Counselor Flynn, good to go?
No, yeah, I'm good to go. Thank you, Counselor Edwards. Thank you, Counselor Sabi George.
Counselor Baker, I think are you good to go?
Yeah, thank you. Just quick. So Larry, I know other people that I know that have gone out in with a disability, like through print department or whatever, that they were capped. They couldn't earn very much over what they had the retirement. So is that the condition right now, and that will be lifted when and if we're able to pass all this?
That is correct. These are written so that if in the future the officers were able to gain employment or go back to work in another area, they wouldn't be hindered by the limited amount of money that could be earned. That is correct.
And are they capped right now, Larry?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Okay. I always found that to be unfair, that people, if they were able to earn more, they were unable to. So it kind of keeps you in that funny area where you can't work. So I don't think that that's good. I'm glad that will be lifted.
Thank you, Counselor. That is true. Officers unfortunately do get used to being ordered on the overtime or performing voluntary overtime. And I know for my own family, you get accustomed to making a little bit more money than you would in your base pay to go through what these officers are going through at 72%. That's like basically making half of what you would normally earn.
Yeah.
It must be a terrible burden to them. And I do appreciate your support.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Arroyo.
Thank you. And I just have one question, and maybe something somebody here can answer. The annuity portion of this that goes to spouses, that's true at 72%, or is that only true when you get to the 100% that that annuity to spouses exists?
I don't know. Larry?
Yes, sorry that I keep looking to my right. We like to kick it around and make sure that I have the right answer for you. Counselors, it's our understanding that it depends on which option that the employee files for. So
Exactly.
If you're familiar, is that right, Councilor Flaherty?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's what you elect.
Thank you.
So
that would be the C option. So if you pick the C option, if I pick the C option and passed away, my wife gets a smaller version of what my pension is.
And when do you make that choice? Is that a choice that's already been made, or is that a choice that happens
at retirement? When you go in to file your paperwork, you have to check A, B, or C.
And so in this case, all three chose C. Is that accurate?
For the 72%
currently.
Is that what you're referring to?
No,
Counselor?
for the spousal annuity. If the spousal annuity only kicks in if you choose option C, is
They
it
would
fair
have
to say?
They would have to answer that individually.
Correct.
That's an individual choice.
That's
All right,
one.
I'm happy to take that answer offline or however it makes it easier for folks to do that.
Well, I think
That's my only question.
yes, and if I may, and people can correct me, the 72% is the option part, but we're passing a special act that would, if passed, automatically by passing it here and passing it to State House, give them 75% of the 100 that would pass at the State House. So no election by the officers. We technically make that election for them.
That's correct. That is correct, Council.
Okay. Okay, right now, can you hear me? Sorry, it said I'm muted. My apologies. So Counselor Asabi George, you and I will get together on scheduling and figuring out what the next steps specifically are. Counselor Larry and Donald, if you would like to go ahead and whatever you want to send, you can send to either my committee that we can redistribute, or you can go directly to the counselors, and we will hopefully take this matter up before the end of the year and be done.
Thank you, Counselor, and everyone.
Thank you, Counselor. If you could please pass on my number. I know I speak to most of you, but please pass my number on to anyone that wishes to talk about any issue as regard to our members. I'm happy to talk.
Very well.
Likewise,
Counselor
Counsel.
George.
I will say, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that, sort of the instructions of the next step. I will, it is important to me that we're not requiring Ryan, Terry, and Harry to be present for additional proceedings, that they've offered their testimony today. It is on the record. We've had this conversation, that the future conversation will be around procedure and collection of outstanding information prior to our work as a council.
100% agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, Madam Chair. I do want to have that stated out loud because I do want to appreciate and acknowledge, I've said it already, but I do want to note that Terry, Harry, and Ryan, that today was a very difficult day for you to be here with us. I know that there was a great deal of hesitation to presenting yourselves before this body and before this committee. So I want to thank Madam Chair for making that process as smooth and easy for the three of you. But I do, in the end, want to just express my thanks for your service to our city, for your continued efforts to heal and to be well and to support yourselves and your families. And I just, on behalf of the city, thank you for your service.
Thank you. And with that, I am now closing out today's hearing, and we will follow up for next steps. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.